Who wrote the old verses? The old verses are these small pieces of writing written from an unknown author filled with rich details of Hisui's history and lore, and they're hidden and scattered across all of Hisui, only accessible by using the terrible Ursaluna ride feature. And because they're locked behind the Ursaluna search, a lot of players didn't even know that these old verses existed. And that's unfortunate because the old verses are so rich in detail that has brought in a huge portion of the theory, lore, and speculation talk from Pokemon Legends Arceus, even going as far as mentioning Sinjo as an actual place rather than a temple. But the crazy thing is, we don't actually know who wrote these verses, as it's definitely not the hero of old. So why not take some possible candidates as to who wrote these old verses?
Hey Pokemon Masters, Toby here, and HybridHero doesn't know I've arrived a little bit early. Speaking of heroes, the old verses are not written by the hero of old. While some of the verses certainly pertain to the hero, many of them reference the hero in the third person. Both Old Verse 4 and 10 refer to the hero in the third person, which would be a weird thing to do if the verses were about the hero, despite the fact it would be very cool if it was the hero who wrote these. It just doesn't make sense. Especially because if you're watching this channel, then like Hybrid, you probably also think that the hero of old was older. It's literally in the name. Older, old, hero of old. But what you might not know, and what Hybrid doesn't know, is that Archie and Maxie are just like Older in that they too are time travelers sent back to the past from the future. But more on that in a little bit. I've taken up enough time as it is.
Huh. Felt like I was waiting for the intro to end for a bit too long. Toby, is everything good on your end?
Oh, yeah, Hybrid, totally fine.
Oh, okay, if you say so. Before we try and figure out who wrote the old verses, why don't we take a look at some of the old verses themselves. Old verse 3 makes direct mention of the hero's 10 companions and how 10 lightning bolts struck these Pokemon for them to turn into the 10 companions, implying that whoever wrote this was old enough to witness the event when it first happened. A few of the other verses also imply that the author has been waiting a long time for something to happen, as in Old Verse 2, there's constant mention of a wish that has yet to be fulfilled, and the author's comrades have since all passed. Old Verse 12 then mentions how they will spend an eternity until the one with the mission appears. So despite all of their comrades and loved ones dying, the writer is still persistent on living and fulfilling their mission. But we all know that no one lives forever.
Old Verse 5 is also very interesting because it mentions the term Celestica. Now that term, Celestica, was used as a general umbrella term by Commander Kamado near the climax of the main story. However, the term Celestica is used in 3 different ways in the old verses. The first way is to describe the original people of Hisui, the Celestic People, the people that make up the remnants of modern-day Celestic Town. These were people who knew about Arceus, Giratina, and the Plates, but the term Celestica was later adopted by both the Diamond and Pearl clan, as mentioned in Old Verse 5, new folk that came sailing in with split views on the almighty Sinnoh. And they just decided to call themselves Celestica, a name that they took, but it wasn't for them to take. And so, while the name did live on, the people did not. Well, aside from a few, thankfully.
So because of Old Verse 5, we know that it wasn't the Diamond Clan or the Pearl Clan that wrote these verses, as they came after the events of the previous verses. And the 5th verse mentions the Diamond and Pearl Clan's arrival and the beginning of their feud. It's not the Galaxy Expedition team, because these guys only showed up very recently in Hisui. And it's not Elder, because he's mentioned in the 3rd person. So, if these 3 options are removed, there's only really one option left. The original Celestica People, or in other words, Cynthia's family and bloodline. Now this makes sense for a multitude of reasons, but let's start off here. Arceus as an entity is misunderstood by every other character in the game, except for 2, Volo and Cogita. Volo may not try and do anything to stop the Diamond and Pearl clan from fighting, but he definitely is out on his own quest to find these Arceus plates and summon God as he has been for hundreds of years. Kogita, on the other hand, is like the old verses incarnate or avatar. Pretty much everything she tells you is related to an old verse, and she even makes direct mention of a mission that she has, and how her duty will finally come to an end.
When you first meet Kogita, as soon as she sees you, she mentions this duty of hers, and how she knows about Arceus, and how the feud between the Diamond and Pearl clan is all really just nonsense. It's not even true. Time and space can't be separated from one another. She then goes on to mention how she knows about the old words, and while she knows them, she doesn't know the truth of them, and that her ancestors have just burdened her with this, and they have ensured that her bloodline will pass these old words along until their mission is fulfilled. Does that sound familiar?
If that wasn't enough, Kogita actually has a friendship with Enamorus, the god of spring, who as far as we can tell, no one else seems to know in the Pokemon world except for Kogita and the author of the old verses, who mentions the god of spring and its friendship to her in old verse 17. And to take this even further, once you catch Enamorus and inform Kogita of this, she actually recites old verse 17 verbatim, showing that she does indeed know the old verses despite them being written so long ago, and that the old words that were previously mentioned are most likely the old verses from the original Celestica people. Her people. Her family, and that the author of the old verses was a member of the Celestica who knew that the mission to save Hisui would not be complete in their lifetime, so they wrote verses so that the word would be spread from generation to generation until their mission comes to an end. And in Pokemon Legends Arceus, it finally did. While the old verses that were written were lost to the land of Hisui, their words were passed down and lived on in the hearts of the true Celestica people, and later, the people of Celestic Town. It was a huge burden on Kogita and possibly helped send Volo into madness, but yeah, it all worked out in the end.
And it worked out for Archie and Maxie as well, who even in the distant past seemed to squabble about which legendary Pokemon they should follow, and forming the Diamond and Pearl clans. But Hybrid and I will talk about that in the video over on my channel, which you can check out using the link in the description right now.